While Stewie and Nothing produce guides and content for Boomeo, which is interesting and outlines their perspective on the game, can teach newer players and players who have a mind to improve a lot, their team, Cloud9, is absolutely stagnant right now. There's a good reason why they haven't made any kind of legitimate progress in the last few months. They've already passed the point where, I mean, they're approaching... we're talking like, what, 11 months or something since they made this particular 5-man lineup, since they got Automatic into the team. And they just decided that it's not only stagnant, but they're going nowhere. We've seen everything from Cloud9 we're going to see. They've already kind of had their chances to do something with this 5-man lineup, yet they've kept this 5-man lineup regardless and haven't made any changes. And they're a team right now who won't qualify for the major, quite frankly, if they stay with this lineup. The big problem they have is there's nothing left to be done within the team that can fix their problems. They're clearly a team who are desperately in need of a good structure and a good in-game leader, and they've tried to find that in-game leader within their team. Now, with their old lineup, when they had Freakazoid at the beginning of 2016, they tried out using Nothing as an in-game leader. It didn't work. They had some of the worst T-sides they ever had. Later on, they got Stewie to become the in-game leader after the period where they had Slemmy. Okay, that worked initially, but that was also in what was being dubbed the uncertainty era, the parity era, the time when there was a lot of different teams and none of them were super, super powerful beyond SK perhaps. And as a result, they were able to get some good placings, but that eventually leveled off. Yes, they had the surprise win at EPL, but ever since then, there have been some terrible results, some very mediocre results. They've never looked again like a team who's going to make a deep playoff run at an international tournament. They tried out Automatic more recently as the in-game leader. Seemed all right enough initially. In interviews, it sounded good. He sounded like a guy who had a mind for the game, but you saw it took a hit on his individual game. He was one of the... And Stewie was the playmaker of the team, the star in that sense, but Automatic was a star in terms of putting up the numbers. He was supposed to be the cold zero of Cloud9, and ever since he became the in-game leader, that just leveled right off, and he wasn't able to have that same level of impact, so now the firepower of Cloud9 was gone. Now they've swapped it back to Stewie 2K again. I mean, we've already seen what happens there. He has a limited skill set as an in-game leader. He's all right, but he's a makeshift in-game leader, and he can't take them further with this lineup than they've gone thus far. Then you look at the other players in the team. Nothing's been very up and down. Skadoodle started to pick it up again as the year ended, coming to this year. It's gone MIA again, and Shroud has had really big problems over the last 6 months or so of play, and as a result is talking on a semi-regular basis, it seems, about potential retirement. So I was thinking about a player move you could make that's not unrealistic, that I actually think just as one move alone could massively put Cloud9 on the fast track to becoming a good international team again, becoming not only a top 10 international team, but being able to make majors and being able to win series against top teams. So the simple move is if they were able to get the services of FNS, as some people call him, from CLG, Counter Logic Gaming. So the guy who just came back, he was obviously in TSM before, originally in CLG, and now he's rejoined CLG, and over there, partnering up with Cutler again. They've got the youngsters in Kusta and Ethan and Ricky, and they're trying to make a team there they think's decent enough, and they obviously managed a quite shocking playoff performance at Star Series and made the top 8 there, but had to play the eventual second place team Astralis and lost there in the quarterfinals. So part of the reason why I think FNS would be an ideal pickup if they could get him in Cloud9 is, first of all, look at his history as an in-game leader. So the CLG team that he was the leader of in early 2015, they had numerous big upsets over top European teams. They managed to beat LDLC, then arguably number 1, number 2 team in the world around Fnatic. They beat them at MLG and on Dust 2, one of the strongest maps for that team. Then at ESEA Pro League Season 1, they upset Fnatic on Mirage, another strong map for one of those teams. Mirage, one of the absolute best maps for Fnatic. They narrowly beat them there. They had numerous upsets. Then he went to TSM. In TSM, okay, yes, he was sharing leadership with Semphis in and out, but they had that upset run at ECS the first season where they made top 4 there. Come back into CLG now, revived. He had the Star Series won. They managed to, the way they won that as well, especially, showcased good leadership. Like, first of all, they specifically planned with the analyst, the coach, and with FNS to have Gambit baited into a Cobble pick. Gambit, obviously, at the time, unbeaten on Cobble with this lineup, a very, very strong team. So they purposely baited them into it and prepared accordingly on Cobble and were able to beat them on it. Then they went ahead and they beat Immortals on Cash when Immortals still had FNX, and Immortals obviously were coming off that top 4 at Katowice, another unexpected win. he's also shown in that team, and this is a key element coming into Cloud9. So obviously we've seen there, he's a guy who knows how to run a team structure, who's been able to get upsets over better teams. So now let's look at the fact that if he comes into Cloud9, obviously two of the players we're keeping is Stewie and Automatic. They're our star core. And they're young stars. They're guys who haven't been stars for very long. This is still their time at the top of the scene. And they need someone who isn't just going to let them play their game, but is going to use them within their system and build a system around them that's going to make their game even more effective so that their effect is amplified within the team. Well, if we go and we look, he was working with young stars in CLG. He had Kusta, he had Ethan. Then they had the veterans with the support core. It was him, it was Kotler. They were the guys building around those players and using the youngest to become the stars of the team. We remember, it was Ethan against Immortals. It was Ricky against Gambit. Obviously, Kusta had his games, particularly against Astralis in the first game. He was able to get the most, actually, almost that we've seen out of those young players, those newer players, in the star roles, and really seem to have a sense of how to put them in their best positions. If he comes and he gets Stewie and Automatic, they're an even better level of star player for youngsters and newer players. I think Stewie 2K's fearless nature, his aggressive playmaking, would be a massive boon for an in-game leader like FNS, and then the fact that FNS knows how to run a team structure around it means that those aggressive players would have more impact. Think of what Config does for a team like North. Think of what Fur does for SK Gaming. You take these strong, aggressive playmakers with high skill level and you put them with a good in-game leader who's of a like mind and builds the team around what they're going to do, and they can be very powerful weapons. Automatic, that really solid mid-round player, can hold spots very well. Again, an ideal player to play with an in-game leader like this who knows what he's doing. Also, because he's shown this tendency where he thinks about the game a lot and he studies the game and he tried his hand at being an in-game leader, I feel like that's an ideal person to be a secondary caller if you had an FNS in your team. Then here's a factor people won't even have thought of. So when people look at Skadoodle, because they remember what a fantastic player he was 2 years ago, and they also like him because he has nothing to dislike about him, because he's not someone who's very vocal and certainly doesn't say anything negative, as a result, people always take the blame off Skadoodle and they say, right, well, you know, people haven't used him the correct way and he's an in-game leader who can use him the right way. Now, that in itself does not excuse you as an individual player. It's still playing badly as an individual player, and on his current basis, the current situation of where he's at, probably doesn't deserve to be in the team. But put FNS with him, and I think that would be, it'd be the last chance saloon for Skadoodle, but I feel like that's something that could work. Think about FNS. He had JDM when JDM was at arguably his best. Admittedly, he was very good as well after FNS's era, but JDM obviously was fantastic even in the middle of 2015 when he was in the lineup. And this is someone where we saw JDM go into Liquid and not have a good in-game leader and not have a team set up around him who could use his AWPing skills, and he was massively limited in his impact. So just like JDM, Skadoodle is someone who needs to be put in position, who needs to be put where he's best suited to be, not just left to his own devices, and then things built around him and a system put in place that supports him and allows his talent to shine. I feel like FNS would be the ideal person to see if there's anything left in Skadoodle in that sense, if he can still be a top-level AWPer who you can set up and then he can hit those good shots. Then you've got to consider, I mean, if we're making moves, personally, I wouldn't just make the one move. If you really want to make a bold move in Cloud9, I think you have to remove 2 out of the 3. You have to remove 2 out of Nothing, Shroud, and Skadoodle. So let's imagine we're keeping Skadoodle in this scenario. Let's say we're removing Nothing and Shroud. So we're going to bring in FNS for one of them. I would also say, personally, either keep Nothing or Shroud and then work with them in the supportive role and make them embrace that role and work with FNS in that sense. Or if you want to just go ahead and get a package, just get Kotler as well. Bring him in. He's shown with his recent lineup he can play a supportive style. He's one of the better supportive players in the last few years in NA. Admittedly, he had his hard times when FNS wasn't there, but I feel like you see him play with FNS, and there's a reason why, freed up from being an in-game leader, I think he's been a lot more effective. I also think Nothing could certainly do that role. It's just the problem is he has shown a tendency to then want to veer from that and to kind of play any role he wants and swap between them. He hasn't really dedicated himself, but if he wants to stick around and if he really has the motivation still, which is obviously a problem we have to question in Shroud, then perhaps you can make Nothing do that. So even though it's a simple move, even though in theory, yes, obviously he has a contract with CLG, they're obviously liking where he's at. I know Cloud9 is a team who could afford this buyout. I know that they are not a team that want to sit on their laurels and the situation they're in right now and just have big names and not perform. So they know they have to make bold moves. And if you're going to make one within the NA region, assuming you're not going to import foreign players, which I think would be a good idea, by the way, then I think this is a great move to make. I think it's a simple one that immediately starts to make the rest of your team more effective. And crucially, because bringing in an FNX would see what have we got left in Shroud or what have we got left in Nothing, or can Skadoodle work, I think you would start to get a sense for which one of those those guys need to be heading out the door and which ones need to replace and with what. Then you've got your star players already in Stewie and Automatic, put them in position, then see who works out as the more supportive core. FNS isn't a bit strong fragger himself, but he's certainly decent enough for an NA level and has the in-game leading chops and has proven it and has the resume to work with, that I think you would have the strong star duo, you'd have some supportive elements, and you'd soon figure out the framework of what you need to replace to make Cloud9 a better team and a team that could actually compete internationally and not just get the odd upset, but ultimately underwhelm.
Hey guys, I'm DW. I have won 3 majors in CSGO, and this is Thorin's YouTube channel.
What up guys, this is Jordan Gilbert and
Hello guys, this is Gabriel Fallen, player from Escape Gaming.
Salut les gars, c'est Shox de G2.
Hey guys, this is Spencer Rico Martin.
We work with some of the world's top pros to teach you how to take your game to the next level with constantly updated training content. When you're done watching and want to train or warm up, just a few clicks will put you in your favorite training mods like Deathmatch. But why warm up for a match on Mirage by getting shot in the back on Dust 2? That's why we built Duels. Real fights on real maps. 1 minute in Duels is like 20 rounds of real CS. The best way to train and warm up. Exclusively available on Boomeo.com.